Preamble. Dilophosaurus is in an interesting spot because we already did a follow-up to it that you can watch at the link that has appeared above me somewhere, and you should do that if you haven't yet, because I'm not going to repeat stuff that I already said there. Okay, enjoy the original episode.
Mike's girlfriend's favorite dinosaur is Dilophosaurus, and he requested that we do Dilophosaurus. So, here you go. Dilophosaurus is kind of an interesting creature on the grounds that we're not really sure where it fits into the Theropod family tree. Like, we generally split theropods into those that are closer related to birds and those that aren't. They diverged somewhere in the late Triassic to early Jurassic period. This guy appeared in the early Jurassic period and died out in the early Jurassic period. We're not sure if he fits into the Coelophysids, which are, the more distantly related group, or into the Tetanurans. Tetanurans. Stiff-tails. I should just say stiff-tails because that's easier to understand. That's all it means. Which is the group that includes birds. Or maybe he's close to the Tetanurans, but not a true member, which is, I think, where Cladistics currently stands as far as Dilophosaurus and its closest relatives. The reason I mention this is because I wanted to. It really doesn't have any bearing on the wrongness of this toy. I just like to provide tangential information about the phylogeny of the creature I'm talking about. Last episode, it was rather relevant. Not so much this episode. I suppose we should start with the most obvious problem, which is that it's standing on its tail, like that Charles Knight painting again. So, first response is please tilt the animal forward and lengthen the tail and have the spine be straighter on the main sequence of the back there, so that its center of gravity is at the hip, tail out for balance. The neck could be a bit longer as well. The ratio between the neck and the back in front of the hip is like 2 to 3. This is about a 20-foot creature, by the way. 20 feet long, but only like a half ton to a ton in weight. I say only, but that is rather small, at least as far as dinosaurs go. Not for the time, though. Early Jurassic, that was a decently sized carnivore. That said, it was pretty lightly built. This guy's got kind of a barrel shape going on. I'd rather he was a little more lithe? I have no idea how to pronounce that word. He should be slenderer. Skull-wise, Dilophosaurus is named for its skull, more accurately for the two crests. Dilophosaurus means two-crested lizard. Funny story, in the 1940s, this was discovered in Arizona, they initially named it Megalosaurus, because apparently it was close enough to a Megalosaurus, or that specimen seemed close enough to a Megalosaurus to be named the same genus. Then they found another specimen that had the crests, more apparent, and they said, oh, this is a completely separate genus, so they decided to name it for the crests. So the crest part of the name is accurate, but it wasn't a lizard, and they seem to have given it a lizard head. The head is triangular shaped, which isn't, too bad, but it should be narrower. Theropod skull. It should also be longer. Dilophosaurus was another one that had this weird swoop going on the main part of the jaw, the maxilla, swooped up to the premaxilla, which was somewhat loosely attached. And tilted down a little bit. It was a little dorky looking. And the teeth in the maxilla would have been really long. a lot of reconstructions show it with the main part of the teeth, the maxillary teeth, jutting down beyond the bottom of the lower jaw, which looks kind of neat. Incidentally, the teeth in the front part of the mouth, the maxillary teeth, projected backwards a little bit. I don't know what the purpose of that was. It seems sort of a weird feature to have if you're a carnivore. A predatory carnivore, I should say. If you're a scavenger, I suppose it makes sense because it allows you to pull. But the nostrils, incidentally, are not accurate because this snout just sort of cuts off. So get the nostrils further back from the tip and get the crests further back from the tip of the snout as well. They sort of ended at the nostrils. Also, this doesn't have the projections in the back of the the back of the crests that it had. It had these, they really looked like little fingers on the tail end of it. He's got really tiny hands, which is not bad. It did have proportionally tiny hands, like any theropod, like many theropods. But they're pronated down, which we now know it really could not do. It would have its hands facing each other. Sort of has accurate number of fingers. Its fourth finger was sort of like a dew claw, only the dew claw was even with the last digit. So you have the first finger was short but with a relatively long claw, middle two fingers about equal length with shorter claws, and then the last claw was just a claw, like it. Legs also are proportionally pretty good. Oh, and it's digitigrade. It's standing on its toes. That's accurate. Yay. And it even, it's hard to see, but it totally has dew claws on the inside of its foot. That's where the first toe migrated up to become a dew claw. Its toes should be a little more widely spread, though, which I can say with confidence because we totally have footprints from this creature, and that's kind of cool. Oh, we also have a little bone that we figure was a vestigial fifth toe. It was migrated up inside the leg. It wouldn't have been apparent. You wouldn't see it on a toy because it was just sort of floating there. But it was still there, and that's cool to me. And I really shouldn't have to say this at this point, but to our knowledge, it did not spit poison and it did not have, a frill around its head like in the Jurassic Park. Also, it was significantly larger than the one in the Jurassic Park. It wouldn't have fit in your car. That's all I can think of to say about Dilophosaurus. Thank you for watching Your Dinosaurs Are Wrong. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Even go to thegeekgroup.org to find out how you can become a member and donate. Comment with dinosaurs you'd like me to talk about on the show, or even send me a toy dinosaur and I'll have that on the show. Our address is in the description. See you next time.
I had one whole page of notes for that one, so clearly I did at least some prep, but there was plenty of stuff I just didn't think through or explicitly got wrong. So here goes. For starters, Dilophosaurus' placement is a lot better resolved now, but even at the time, it was a ridiculous statement for me to say that knowing where it fits into the dinosaur family tree has no bearing on how we reconstruct it. That's how you reconstruct an animal, especially for Dilophosaurus, which we don't have the toy that we had in the original episode, but this is close enough. Restorations are either more Carnosaur-like, where it's big and heavy, or more Coelophysis-like, where it's little and lithe. And my restoration for the episode wound up on that side of the scale. But yeah, now that we can place it in the dinosaur family tree, we have a much better reconstruction. I said its mass was like twice what it should be. Nobody puts Dilophosaurus's mass at more than half a ton. And the length I gave was correct, but 7 meters would be 23 feet, not 20. It bears repeating that we have several individuals of different sizes, and these are animals that, when they grew, could have some flexibility as far as the maximum size they wound up reaching. I reconstructed it, as I said, pretty snaky and very skinny, which together with the mass overestimation is pretty funny, because I was apparently envisioning this really lithe little animal that also is incredibly dense. Like, between the pneumatization and whatever other soft tissues it might have had on the head and neck, like, probably not as, snake-like, as I put it. The skeletal elements are actually from the Navajo Nation. The Kayenta Formation is part of the Painted Desert. That's just something I would have specified if we did the episode today, and I didn't back then. Some of the ways I said things back then, just like weird to swoop and dorky looking. These are what I called SciComm when we made that episode. As I said in the Synapisode, the maxilla-premaxilla connection is not as ligamentous as we previously thought. Hey, Past Steven, maybe you should critically examine the fact that the teeth poke out beyond the bottom of the mandible with the mouth closed. Maybe you should think about that the animal in life might not have its teeth coming out of its socket and might not have the bottom teeth digging into the roof of the mouth, because that would be painful. I was starting to dip my toe into considering paleobiology and mechanics, but I didn't then think, oh, well, if the teeth are angled in such a way that it looks like they might have been pulling, or maybe they were having a trapping function or a ensnaring function, that would imply that the ligamentous connection for the premaxilla isn't as weak as we thought. But I didn't think that one through, and I continue to just misreport aspects of the fingers and toes. So I said it had a fourth finger claw. It did not. I don't think any archosaur did. The fourth hand bone is tucked underneath the third hand bone, and ichnology suggests, though not conclusively, that it was just incorporated into the mass of the hand. Similarly, I said it had a fifth toe. No, it didn't. It had a fifth foot bone, a metatarsal, but that would have just been embedded within the foot. And I used the word vestigial, and I don't think that's right. Like, just because it wasn't supporting a toe doesn't mean it's vestigial. It might have still had some function of, like, the ligaments lying against it, or having some kind of structural reason to be incorporated into the foot still. And I suppose, strictly speaking, the movie Dilophosaurus did not fit into a car because it only had its head and hands in the car in that scene, but it was still too small. Or they should have specified that it was a juvenile, if that's the case. In terms of things I straight up omitted, it is extremely unsurprising that a hard-to-place, incompletely known theropod in the 1950s would just get dumped into Megalosaurus. That's what we did at the time. But yes, at first the crests were unknown. Now that we know what we're looking for, you can actually see some hint of them in the material we had at the time, but it was reasonable to restore the specimen, as Juan Langston did, as just a more normal, whatever that means, Carnosaurian skull. Especially considering that the preliminary description was, by its nature, not very in-depth. They made some calls at the time that we now know to be incorrect, but that doesn't mean that they were unreasonable. I neglected to mention the animal's specific namesake. Wells named it wetherilli after John Wetherill, who was, quote, an explorer, friend to scientists, and trusted trader and counselor to the Navajo. It was actually that guy's nephew, Milton, who first alerted the researchers to the presence of these bones. It is wild that I didn't say more about the footprints. So the best tracks we have are actually not contemporary with the body fossils of Dilophosaurus. We have the St. George track site, which is in southwestern Utah, which is older than the skeletons we find at Kayenta. Then, younger than that, in northeastern Utah, we have the Navajo Sandstone tracks, which is where the photo I showed came from. So the responsible way to talk about these is to say we have tracks from an animal the size of and very similar to Dilophosaurus, though not exactly contemporary, but in roughly the same time and place. But the aforementioned St. George track site has this beautiful trackway which shows a Dilophosaurus-like animal walking along a lakeshore and then sitting down. And when it sits down, it has its legs folded under its body, and we get prints from the hands and arms, prints from the feet, and prints from the ischium. So we have direct ichnological evidence of it sitting parasagittally, of it sitting with its hands facing one another. You know, we have corroborating evidence of the way we articulate the bones, which is pretty cool. I would very much like to return to the early Jurassic before long here. It's a very cool time period, not least because the information we have about it is pretty limited, so workers have to do a lot of detective work to piece stuff together, and that's always a fun story to report on and to just read about. But until we revisit this period, I want to thank you for tuning in for this archive episode. I again encourage you to watch the Synapsode that we did following up on this animal, and like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. We would like to extend a special thank you to these individuals who have gone above and beyond to support this show. We could not have done it without you. Thank you.